Today I'm going to be stepping away from the Grand Wagoneer project for a little bit to move over to my R2.8 turbo diesel powered Land Rover Discovery to swap out the transfer case. This LT230 transfer case is the only thing I left in place when I did the Cummins swap. It's got over 200,000 miles on it. It leaks, it's been dry I think more than once, and I believe it was dry when I went to tow that Wagoneer home, so I think it's finally time to address it. Welcome to Repower Garage. So when I originally did the Cummins swap, the reason I left this transfer case in place is because I wanted to be able to keep factory drive shafts for spares. And so I used it as my datum to set the transmission and then the engine. Now, having said that, if I would have had more time and frankly more money at the time and space, I would have gone back and I would have pulled it out. I did notice that the cross member bolts, when I was under there, someone had stripped at least 2 of them off. So I've got to remove a cross member before I can even get this thing out. This transfer case is about 300 pounds. It's got a lot of weight to it. It's gear driven, it's not chain driven. And it also has the integrated parking brake drum on the rear output yoke. So I don't know why Land Rover did that. I'm sure they had the reasons, but it's just one more step in servicing the transfer case is either dealing with the weight of that, having to disconnect the cable, or trying to take it off and hang it under the vehicle. I've seen people do both. Since I have a fresh one here with a lot lower miles, I think this came out of a truck with about 80,000 miles on it. I'm going to use this on the new one, so I'll go ahead and remove the old box as a whole. Since it is such a heavy box, there is a service tool that you can find on the internet that Land Rover makes, and they kind of give you instructions in the rave manual that you can attach to the bottom of this box. It is not something you want to try to muscle down. You want to have a transmission jack with the appropriate adapter on it. You'll read about guys that are like, oh, get 2 of your friends and get under there. Super dangerous. When I was a teenager, I dropped an NP205 on my hand and almost lost a finger. So I am going to fab up one of those plates real quick for my transmission jack and try to safely get this off. You'll see on my spare that someone's already robbed the front output housing because they wanted the center diff lock function that was on this vintage of the LT230. You can bolt it on older vintages, and what that gives you in this all-wheel drive application is the ability to lock the front and rear drive shafts so they spin at the same time. So super muddy conditions or whatever it might be, rather than just being in an all-wheel drive, it kind of converts it to a part-time 4-wheel drive type situation. Before I go underneath and get dirty trying to figure out how to get the bolts out of that cross member, there is some interior work that you need to do when you're dropping one of these. Pulling out the center console is not a hard job on this. Gives you an opportunity to clean it as well because there are some bolts that hold that cable actuated center diff lock. You need to drop those. And also, depending on what you do for your e-brake, you can disconnect your e-brake lever cable and snake that cable through the floor. There is an access pan that I had off on the transmission tunnel when I did the swap. If memory serves me correct, I did that for a couple of reasons, including accessing the top bolts on the transfer case adapter from the GM 6L80E. I'm hoping I don't have to pull that plate out. I riveted it in place, it's sealed. So I'm gonna start with leaving that in place and just feed the e-brake cable through and the diff lock bolts. In order to get that center console out, you're going to have to put the transmission into neutral so you can remove that shifter lever. There is a solenoid, obviously, that is battery power that disengages the park function. So first things first, you need to go ahead and get it into neutral with your wheels chalked, and then you can disconnect that battery so your battery doesn't die while you're doing this project. All right, so my memory is a little fuzzy. I haven't done that in 6 years, but I moved everything over to the table to show you guys the best order of operations, or what I did, for those who aren't going to read the manual. So to get your console out of the Land Rover D2, first things first, you can pop the top off of these cup holders. Then there's one screw underneath, screw on the side. Do that to both sides. Then you can pop the four-wheel drive lever off. You just kind of work that around that knob, then unscrews for your four-wheel drive diff lock. You pull that whole thing out, as nice and corroded as it is. Then you want to put your transmission shifter into drive. So I think I said neutral earlier, it's actually drive. And you're going to position yourself in a seat, you're going to grab on, and on the D2s, not the D1s, on the D2s, you're just going to pull straight up as hard as you can, and be sure not to punch yourself in the face with it, because that could happen. Once that's out of the way, you can pop that shifter bezel off. There's a wiring harness under it with a little bit of a cam lock, so a little gray button, or a detent button, a gray lever. Pull that out of the way, and it'll pop the plug out. Then you can take the bezel off of your seat and window switches. So the heated seat and window switches, I should say. And there are some Phillips head screws in there. Once you have that off, you can unplug those one at a time. And then you can get over to the seat adjustment area. Those bezels on the side of your consoles, they just have two spring tabs, top and bottom. Pop those out. And then it is a big cam lock plug. So you'll see on the bottom a piece that you just grab and you pull a slide straight out, and you'll start to be able to work the plug loose and then pull the slide out a little further, and it will just pop off. Then there are two screws inside of the center console, and then two screws under that center diff lock cover, and the thing should lift out. Don't forget to unplug that cigarette lighter once you get it up in the air. One thing I forgot, because it's not on the table, is the emergency lever. So the handbrake lever, put it all the way down, and there is a spring clip and a pin. Go ahead and take the spring clip off, slide the pin out, and that releases a cable for your brake. Then you can pull that handbrake lever straight up in the air, and that'll allow you to get the console out over it. And the last thing you have to do once you're back in the car to access the bolts for the center diff lock is there is a sound mat, piece of insulation you can peel back. I'm hoping that's as far as I need to get into the center console. So it's just the top half of the console. You can see extra wires here because of all my random Cummins stuff that I was playing with. But I'll pull this back, and then you'll see the 4 bolts, and you can see the cable here for the transfer case, or I'm sorry, you see this cable here for the parking brake. I will loosen that so I can feed it through the tunnel, and we'll go underneath. I've got the Rover up on jack stands, slid underneath. Before I took the drive shafts out, I thought I would just go ahead and check to see if my suspicions were correct. There are 8 small cap screws holding that cross member on. That cross member goes below the transfer case, and it is the first step of getting that transfer case out. All 8 of those cap bolts were stripped, rounded, whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure if they were the factory ones or if someone else who worked on this in the past did it, but they're only for a 10mm socket, so they're not like a larger flange metric thread. I think that's pretty silly on this. Used to working on Jeeps where you might have like 2 big bolts holding in a cross member, not 8 tiny ones. So I'm gonna run to the auto parts store and try to get an easy out and see if I can grab these and unthread them. Okay, quick trip to the international loading dock, and I picked up a set of bolt extractors. So if you don't have these in your shop or your garage, they're pretty handy to have if you're working on old stuff. What it does, you can have a rounded head on a bolt, and this will, seat over that bolt, and as you're trying to loosen it, it will actually bite into the bolt, mangles the bolt, but it grabs it and twists it off. So now we'll just see if these bolts break. Hopefully they won't, and hopefully they just had stripped heads, and we'll go from there. All right, so the extractor bit worked pretty well. It got me halfway there. So 3 of the 4 bolts on the other side came out, 1 broke. Moved to this side, and 1 was already broke and missing, and the other 3 are stripped beyond what the extractor bit will do. So looking in here, it's not gonna drill out because these are still hardened bolts, and I can't really get a tool, a big power tool in there, so I'm gonna take a 3-inch grinder and try to cut the heads off of the 3 remaining bolts. And we'll see if I can do that. I will probably cut into the cross member just a little bit, but since I'll have it out, I can weld it back up anyway. And when I go to put it back together, maybe I'll come up with a better idea. All right, I got the grinder in there the best I could. I'm gonna try to get the rest of it, just brute force. I'm gonna pull it off with a crowbar. Huge pain in the butt. Very unnecessary. I really don't understand the engineering behind that. That cross member not only does not directly support that transfer case, it also passes under the drain plug of the transfer case. So great opportunity for me to do something different when I put it back together, just to make it more serviceable. You know, I've not really had to drain this transfer case yet because it drains itself from everywhere but the plug. All right, next thing I'm going to do here is get the drive shafts out of the way, and then it'll be time to lift up the powertrain or support it just enough with a jack that I can go ahead and take the 2 isolators off of the transfer case support and get the weight off of those so I can remove those and start unbolting. All right, drive shafts are out. I've got the 2 nuts for the rear isolators. There's 1 on each side of the transfer case. One's actually attached to the transmission adapter. If it were a Rover transmission, it'd be the transmission. The other is attached to the transfer case itself. Those 2 nuts on the bottom come off, and then once you're ready to jack the transfer case up, and it's supported, then you'll take those mounts completely off. So there are 4 bolts going into both the transfer case adapter and then the transfer case on the other side. But before we can do that, we need to make our jack adapter that'll hold onto this transfer case. Like I said, this is about a 300-pound transfer case. There's no safe way to get it down without having a proper jack. There's no safe way to get this thing to secure it to a jack without having some kind of adapter. So next up, using some scraps we have around the shop, I'm gonna fab up a quick transfer case jack adapter. So here I've got the transfer case that we'll be putting in. It's actually upside down right now, so you're looking at the bottom access panel. That on the T-case that's in the truck right now is a 30-degree angle. So we will build our, and by we, I mean me and our TV viewers at home, I will build a 30-degree mount that will then bolt to my transmission jack and make life a lot easier, safer. Well, here we go. I said in my first video that, you know, this is a work in progress, this whole shop, and I'm not lying. So I'm standing in the fab room, and yeah, it ain't done. There's not a lot of fab equipment in here. In fact, all I have right now is the stuff I had in my garage at home, including my trusty weld wagon. I was hoping to use this transmission jack adapter and put it on top of my floor jack and just create a fixture bolted or welded at the top of that. It's not gonna work because the whole assembly is gonna be too tall, and if I lower it down, I wouldn't be able to get the transfer case out from beneath the Land Rover. So I'm gonna start from scratch, make something lower profile, because I only have one floor jack here, and add a little bit more time, but hey, that's okay. I'll have it for the future. There we go, homemade mount for the floor jack. Not too bad, made completely from scrap that I have been kicking around for a while, so pretty happy about that. And we'll try it out when I can get back under this. All right, had to let this cool off for a little bit, go feed the kids, do some other stuff, but I am back. I will paint this new handy dandy transfer case jack adapter after I use it. I'll make sure it works first in the event that I have to cut it up, do some rework, but time to get back under the Rover. We're gonna jack it up. Once we have weight off those mounts, we're going to put a jack under the oil pan of the transmission, and then we can start unbolting that T-case. It's getting late. I'm feeling very defeated. I know exactly why I procrastinated on doing this for the last 6 years, and that feels very validating right now. I've got 2 more bolts on the top side of the T-case that I've been trying to get out from the bottom, but I can't. So I'm gonna pull the rest of the center console, go ahead and take off that tunnel access plate, get to the top. I know I can do it from there, but not a fun job. Like, it shouldn't be this hard. It's the next morning here at Repower Garage. I was here late last night, burning the midnight oil. I will say, I love this Land Rover. I love driving it. I love when it works. I hate when I have to do work on the actual Land Rover bits of it. a lot of it doesn't make sense to me. And I think it's because they were designed with kind of a hodgepodge of powertrains. Laying there last night thinking, I should just burn this thing to the ground. I will say to the Rover purists out there, God bless you. It must be a labor of love, because anything I've had to do on this that is strictly Rover related is a huge pain. The front ball joints, when I did those, took a lot longer than they would on a Dana axle. Like I said, getting the original powertrain out, huge pain in the butt. This transfer case, I could have swapped 20 Jeep transfer cases in the time that it's taken me to do this one. So very, very frustrated, very tired, but we're gonna keep on keeping on, because when we get it back together, hopefully it's 6 more years before I have to touch another Land Rover bit on this. I'm gonna start this morning with something a mentor of mine taught me a long time ago, and that is reset. I should have done it last night, but I've got tools everywhere. I know what I need now to put it back together. So before I get under there and start my morning workout on my back to finish getting this T-case out, I'm gonna go ahead and reset my tools, clean up, sweep up a little bit. It'll make me feel better, and it will hopefully make things go back together a little faster on the back side of this. So what I'm fighting against, I think, is the frame isolator that's actually on the transfer case. I don't have enough clearance, or my jack won't extend high enough to get that out of the way. I was hoping I could just slide behind it, but it looks like I'm gonna have to readjust either the jack, the mount, or the vehicle so that I can go higher with the transfer case and pull that out of there. So new shop, time for a new tool. I went and splurged on a lower profile, longer reach floor jack. My old trusty Craftsman has been with me since I bought it at Sears about 15 years ago. Still works pretty well, but it's only got a 19-inch reach. This new one, we'll say from the International Loading Docks, has about a 25-inch reach, 24 and some change. So I'm gonna take the pad off of that, move the transmission or the transfer case mount over to that, and I think it'll give me the height I need, and it's a lot quicker throw. The Craftsman's tired, so it takes a lot to pump it up. It doesn't always hold very well, so I'll keep it around for years to come, but splurge. All right, I'm not crazy. I'm frustrated, but I'm not crazy. For those of you who have done LT230 swaps in your normal Land Rover, you're probably like, what the hell is this guy doing at this point? But for those of you who have an adapter to a GM 6-speed, you may have run into this. The 4-wheel drive output housing for the 6L80E has to be modified to work with this adapter to the LT230. The LT230 Disco 2 box is a little different on the front output than the Disco 1 and the Defender boxes, from what I understand. And they might not require this trimming. Mine did. And I have one little web of that casting that is hung up on a 10mm bolt. And that is what I've apparently been fighting this whole time. So I'm gonna try to get that bolt out, because I don't know how I could cut the web where it is. And the thing should fall right out. I hope it falls on the floor through the concrete and goes straight to hell where it belongs. No way to get the bolt out. It's against that casting, so I think I can run a small saw. I'm gonna try to run a small saw, maybe by hand first, to cut the rest of that webbing off, and make sure I don't nick the wiring harness for the transmission. And yeah, progress. All right, I got the ear sawed off, dipped my arm in oil, just put oil on my jeans. Anyway, here goes nothing. I've got the LT230 out on the ground. That was awful, I'm not gonna lie. And I might just be mad and tired at the moment, but I'm contemplating whether or not I should put it back together. The truck's got over 200,000 miles on it, and it really frustrates me and doesn't bring me joy to work on the Land Rover parts of the Land Rover. And I've had 6 good years with it, so maybe I'm just mad right now. I've got to go clean up and do my next thing, but for part 2, let's see what we can do here. So I've had a few days to cool off. I had to do some real work and step away, but I am back at it. I am going to take the old transfer case, take the center diff lock housing, the front output shaft housing off, and inspect it. And if it all checks out, I'll go ahead and move it over and start changing the seals out on the replacement LT230 so I can get it ready to go back in. Going back in should be a breeze, right? What could possibly go wrong? So any doubts I was having about the transfer case potentially being at the end of its life were just squelched when I pulled the drain plug here. The magnet has caught a whole bunch of debris, so I'm already feeling good about my decision here. So already I can tell a difference between the two cases. So this guy, old one, lots of chatter. This one, no chatter. So I think this unit has, if I remember right, it's got 60 to 80,000 miles on it. But it was clean. Maybe it was replaced at some point in that time, I'm not sure. Mine is old and trashed. Probably good for a rebuild, so I won't get rid of it. But I think if I get into this Rover T case one more time, it's probably going to be an NP205 between my new Dana 44 axles and my already in there 6L80 transmission, because got the thing back together, went out for a test drive. Everything was great. One thing I noticed when I was putting the front drive shaft back in was I've got a bad cardan joint, or hopefully just the U-joints around the cardan joint. So I'm gonna go pick up some U-joints, but I was able to, with the diff lock feature, that LT230, put the diff lock engaged, and that allows me to drive it as a rear-wheel drive vehicle. Everything sounded great, no leaks. So I'm very happy about that. And once I get this drive shaft taken apart, put back together, I'll be done and ready for the winter. So I love the Land Rover again. Anyway, sorry about this episode. Not that great, but they can't all be fun projects. Sometimes it's just maintenance, and let's face it, sometimes the maintenance on vehicles is the least fun part. I'd rather build something new than fix something broke sometimes. It's been a super busy couple weeks. It was not an ideal time to have the Rover down. I'm excited to have it done. I'm very excited to get back to working on the Grand Wagon here because that's more fun than fixing an old broken down Land Rover. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Repower Garage.